on your piece, because what tends to happen with beginners is that you'll be paying so much attention to your hands that if your foot is sitting on that pedal, you'll like space out, and before you know it, your wheel will have like stopped or will be going like 1,000 miles an hour. So set the speed, plant your feet, then start working on your piece. So you've got your piece of wedged clay. This one's like kind of a little bit big. We'll just do smaller.
Are you going to talk about your crotch?
Yeah, I am. So you really, the positioning on the wheel, you want to be sitting with your crotch like snuggled right up to the wheel, so like you're on a horse, okay? So you've got your piece of wedged clay, pat it until it's kind of in a ball or in sort of like a cone shape. The more symmetrical it is when you throw it onto the wheel, the easier time you'll have centering, which is the first part of the process. And so you kind of just toss it down until it's stuck on there, and then you can karate chop the outside of it with the side of your hand. You guys kind of see how I'm doing that to make sure that it's really stuck on. So the reason that you want to do that is because you don't want the clay to stick to your hands harder than it sticks to the wheel head, because if that happens, then you'll lift it right off. So you get your wheel going really fast for centering, which is the first part of the process. And centering is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically just making the clay perfectly symmetrically placed in the center of your wheel and perfectly smooth and symmetrical in shape. So you can see right now, my clay is like a little bit off center, even though I tried to do a good job of centering it when I threw it down. And it's also like really rough and bumpy. It's dragging my fingers all over the place. So I'll show you what centering is. This is like the hardest and also the most boring part of throwing. So don't worry if this takes you a really long time. You'll totally get it, and me and Patty will help you out with it. So it's the hardest and the most boring part of throwing, but there are a couple things that you can do to make it easier for you. The first one is to get water on your hands really frequently, and I think like every 5 seconds is pretty good for dipping your hands in water. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you want a ton of water on your piece, because if I put like a ton of water on my piece, it's just going to fly right out, because you've got that centrifugal force. So just dip your hands gently, get a little bit of water on your piece every 5 seconds. The other thing that you want to do, and this is really important throughout the whole throwing process, is that you want to anchor your elbows on your legs. So I'm taking my right, are you guys righties or lefties? Righty, righty. Okay, so you're going to want to take your right elbow and tuck it into your midline. And then what you're going to want to do is actually use like your body weight to lean into your clay. And that's kind of going to hold it still in the center of your piece. So I'll show you what everyone wants to do intuitively is to like squeeze the clay like this and push in. But when you do that, no matter how strong you are, the clay is stronger than you and it's going to wobble out. Plus one of your hands is always going to be stronger than the other, and that's going to make it wobble out. So really, by anchoring my elbow in my midline, I'm using all of the power of sort of like my core muscles, the stability of my butt in the chair, the stability of my feet on the ground to push into my clay. So the power is coming from my hips into my elbow, down sort of like my forearm, and into the heel of this right hand. And I'll show you when you guys are doing it and sort of position your hands for you so that you get a feel for it. So frequent water, anchoring your elbows, and then the last thing that you want to remember, which is actually also really important for the whole throwing process, is that when you remove your hands from the clay, it's a 2-step process. So first, to remove my hands from the clay, I want to stop putting pressure on the clay, but hold my hands still in one place for a couple rotations, and then lift them off. So you're removing pressure, then removing contact. And I'll show you what happens. Even if I get my piece perfectly centered, if I take my hands off really quickly, here's what's going to happen. So I took them off really quickly, and do you see that little shiver that it has now? That's because I took my hands off fast. I didn't give it a push or anything. I just took my hands off fast, and it created that shiver. So That goes for any part of the curling process. First you want to remove pressure and let your hands drag there totally relaxed. Then you want to remove your hands. So I've got this nice sort of like low, wide mesa shape, which is perfect. And you can see that now if I drag my fingers on it like I did in the beginning, they're not going to bump all over the place. So they're just sort of holding still. So that means that my piece is centered. The other thing you can look at is you can kind of lean to the side, look at the silhouette of your piece, and it should almost look like the silhouette of your piece is just like holding still. Like if you blur your eyes, you wouldn't really know that it was moving at all. That's how you know it's centered. So that might take a little while on your first try, but it'll get easier the longer you practice. The next step is to make your well, which is like the negative space inside a cup or inside a bowl or inside a plate. It's basically just like a hole in the center of whatever form you're making. So again, I'm going to anchor my elbows, and I'm going to use both thumbs to go down and make my well. And the really important thing about this is that you want to hold your thumbs really stiff. So hold your thumbs stiff, use some water, and go down really slowly into the middle of your piece. So I'm holding my thumbs really stiff so that they can't swirl around. I'm going down really slowly. I'm looking at my thumbs and not looking at the play of my piece, and I think that that's helpful. Because sometimes if you go too fast or if your thumbs are too relaxed, they will start to move a little bit. And you don't typically notice if you're looking at your piece and not at your thumbs. So keep an eye on your thumbs as you're going down. And then, once you've got your well made, the next step is to kind of measure the bottom of your piece. So you don't want to go down too far and make a hole in the bottom of your piece and end up with like a flower pot if you didn't mean to make a flower pot. And you don't want to end up with a really thick, fat bottom of your piece because that's going to crack it when it dries. So you need to check the bottom of your piece. So you stop your wheel. This is the only time that you're ever going to touch your piece on the wheel when the wheel isn't spinning, by the way. For everything else, you always want to touch it when it's spinning. You take your needle tool, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you over here because you don't have X-ray vision, but you're going to put your needle tool down into the bottom of your piece until you feel it make contact with the wheel head. Slide your finger down to mark where that place is, and then pull your needle tool out, and that's going to show you like that you have maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch is ideal for how thick you want your bottom to be. So I'm sliding my pin tool in, marking with my finger, pulling it out, and I've got about 1/2 inch, so this is good. It's better to check too early than too late because you can always go down further, and it's hard, really hard, almost impossible to make that bottom thicker once you've made it too thick. So now I've got my well made, and my next step is to kind of widen this piece until it's as wide as I want. So I think of this as being sort of like an embryonic like form for your piece. You know how like embryos of like chickens look the same as embryos of like pigs until they're like a few days in like gestational days. It's like a thing that happens. So this could be like a bowl, a cup, it would be a huge cup, a vase, a plate, like whatever. So I'm going to think, if you haven't thought yet, like what form am I going to make? And then I'm going to widen it accordingly. So in order to widen it, I'm going to stick 2 fingers down into my piece, just the same way that I was going down to make the well with my thumbs. I'm going to hold those fingers really stiff. And then I'm going to pull from my fingertips against the wall of the piece that's towards me and widen that wall really slowly. So I'm anchoring my elbows on my legs. I'm just waiting until you guys are looking. Take your time. I'm anchoring my elbows on my legs, 2 fingers in, and I'm pulling back from my fingertips towards myself. And just like before, I want to remove pressure, let my fingers drag there, and then remove my fingers. So if I put like pressure, 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 let go fast, do you see that shiver that just started happening?
Do you guys see how her left hand is anchored on her right hand as she's pulling out?
It kind of doesn't matter. My left hand isn't really doing much
Oh, okay.
in this case, but that is important for later. All right, so I've got my piece. I'm going to make this into a vase, so I want to keep it kind of narrow. If I wanted to make like a bowl or a plate, I would widen it a bunch more. So I've got this like nice, narrow, centered piece. I'm going to slow my wheel down a little bit. Have you guys ever ridden on like the Gravitron at the county fair where you like ride on it and then you like stick to the walls because it like goes really fast? So this works the same way. It's always pulling your piece to be wider because of the centrifugal force. So for that reason, if you're going to make a narrow piece, you have to start narrow and keep it narrow. You can't make a wide piece and then expect to like narrow it because you're kind of working against gravity. And that centrifugal force, that like gravitron effect, is more powerful if the wheel is going faster, obviously. So that's why as I'm progressing through these steps, I'm slowing the wheel down. It's also more powerful when your walls are thinner, then they're a little bit lighter and easier to pull out. So as my walls get thinner, I'm slowing down my wheel to compensate for that. So a little bit of water. I like to just kind of dribble water over the rim of my piece. Actually, Phoebe, can you snag me a sponge really quick? I forgot to get a sponge, but you're going to want a sponge to start too. Thank you. You can dribble water really gently over the top of your piece, and that gets the inside and the outside nice and wet. And then I'm going to start working on my walls. So this is actually basically what you're going to do for the rest of the throwing process. I'm going to put 2 fingers on the outside of my piece and 2 fingers on the inside of my piece. And I'm going to anchor my hands to each other so that my hands are touching each other the whole time. And I'm going to put equal pressure on my outside fingers and my inside fingers, really gentle pressure. And I'm really slowly just going to work my fingers up the sides of the wall and then let go. So I'll do that a few more times so that I can show you. Oops, sorry, Patty. And again, my walls are getting thinner. I'm slowing down my wheel a little bit. Can you guys see, Amanda, can you see my hands? Yeah? Okay. So 2 fingers on the outside, 2 fingers on the inside. Hands are braced against each other, and that's just because if I don't brace my hands against each other, no matter how coordinated I am, they're still going to seesaw a little bit on their way up, and it's going to end up throwing my wall off. You can brace your wrists together, your thumbs together, like whatever works for you, as long as your hands are kind of touching each other at some point. And the other nice thing about bracing your hands against each other is you have to brace one elbow, because you're bracing one elbow, so you're anchored. And then you're bracing your left hand on your right hand, so you're still anchored. So this elbow can kind of be floating a little bit. So I'm going to start at the bottom, grab a little chunk of clay, and slowly pull it up. And when I get to the top, instead of letting my fingers sort of like slide off of the top of my piece, I'm going to let go right here and do that 2-step process. So let go of pressure, and then let go of contact. And you can do that as many times as you need to get your walls nice and thin. I'm going fast because I want to get you guys on the wheel, but I actually expect you guys to have to do like 100 of those pulls. So to be working on this really nice and slowly for a really long time in order to make this finished progress. So don't worry if it takes you a lot longer. If I was being realistic, then this demo would probably last like a really long time. All right. So I want to make this, what did I say I'm making, a vase? So I'm going to do a couple more pulls, and then I'll actually show you. Remember how I said that you like kind of couldn't make a wide piece narrower? That's like not entirely true. So in order to make a wide piece a little bit narrower, you can actually do something called collaring in, where it's called collaring in or choking in, because you make kind of a choking motion with your hands. And you got to use lots of water, because you don't want your walls to stick to your hands and fold. And you put really gentle pressure with your hands, and then I'm just sort of collaring in from the bottom up to the top really slowly.